thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great to finally meet you in person because this is how we meet each other nowadays through Zoom, right?
Right.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sean Austin, CEO and co-founder at Helios Life Enterprises, or Helios for short. We're bringing a level of transparency to the financial markets through this brand new channel called Voice Tone, right? So that's
Hmm.
how we talk, not what we say. And we've been pioneering that for the better part of 3 years now, the only company doing it. Some call us a little bit crazy, but we've been doing that for a while.
That's not crazy at all. I think what
Yeah.
you're doing is fantastic. Just sorry, keep going. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I mean I could talk about it for probably 10 hours straight. But what we've done is pioneer this new category. It allows investors to get this layer of transparency from speakers. Right now, it's on the public markets. So think about like an Elon Musk talking and how bullish or how much confidence in what they're saying can be actually detected in their voice tone
Mm.
versus not detected, right? And so speakers are different. People communicate and actually emphasize things differently or uncertain about things differently from different different kind of context, and ultimately that can go out to a lot more. So we think about like actually even interviews with private companies that are startups, potentially what we think in the future could be very interesting spots for us to help support decision making for investors of all types. So private, public, compliance, trade, actually calls like trading calls. All these different scenarios can be, we believe, augmented and supercharged with voice tone.
Wow. And I'm assuming it's like first thing that popped in my head is like detection technology, right? So you could just
Yeah,
listen to
yeah, we
anything
hear
that
that.
anybody says at any point in time, and you can probably figure out whether or not they're fudging the truth
So,
or not.
well, I think, yeah, like uncertainty is detectable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's different layers of like how negative an event could be because we get that a lot. So I'm purposefully choosing my words and my tone, but it is definitely the case that you sound different under certain stressful situations or not. So the best and actually most available sort of like metric for that right now that our voice tone and our models can actually project or forecast is around volatility. So it's
Hmm.
it's connected very closely to how certain either a single speaker is on a subject, but really if you think about like rolling it up to a market level, that is where there's a lot of power we're seeing around
Hmm.
like market trends. So if you have 300 CEOs talking during a busy earnings season, you actually can see we've done this now, and it's on some prominent publications. Is that we actually know there's more uncertainty coming, before the
Wow.
market.
There's no legal issues around this, right? I keep thinking that, if were to take a lie detector test or anything like that, I have to sign a waiver saying, something. But I'm assuming that with what you're doing,
At
are
least
there
for at
legal
least
repercussions?
in the US and for these public calls. So we really focus on a specific, actually, big reason is because of what you just said, the specific public nature of these. So an earnings call, right, is part of sort of, it's not fully required by US entities, but it's part of this public, procedure and protocol to get information out there for investors.
Right.
That domain puts us at sort of, arm's length away from anything around, compliance or security. There's definitely some particulars around getting how you get the data sanctioned in like Europe and beyond. And then if you talk about like private calls, which is being recorded with permission all the time, those
Yeah.
those just get a little more complicated. But yeah, we certainly started at a spot where we're not, legally, bound up, and then we'll approach those when when the time
Yeah.
comes.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So are you one of the founders or are you the founder?
One of two. So the
Okay.
co-founder
So
is the
ha
academic side.
tell me a little bit about your story. Like, how did you come up with this? Like, what was the impetus for getting you started in this direction?
Yeah, so a little bit about it is all the way back from being a teenager, right? Like starting a technology something. I guess I didn't certainly understand quite as much as I do now. That into like for myself independently, that was always of interest. I did like silly things like selling information on eBay or something, like selling lists and things like that when I'm
But
13.
it
So
worked, right? Somebody bought them.
it actually worked. It actually was probably the fastest netting, couple $100 I ever did on something. But that ultimately like springboard to me to always think about it. I have a technical background, went to like a technical university for engineering, computer science. Um, and just I mean, I'm personally just enamored with like doing something that is new, doing
Hmm.
something that is bleeding edge and like challenges myself and a team. And I was played a lot of sports too, so sort of that team aspect and competition, right? Competitive spirit. is all baked into me at the core,
Yep.
which probably not ironically, like I guess you would assume this, very similar to my co-founder, who's actually a semi-pro. He's a PhD, double
Wow.
master, like super academic guy, right? Highly
Nice.
cited for his field, but also was a semi-pro linebacker in college actually in Europe. So like very,
Whoa. True Renaissance man. I
yeah,
love
very
it.
exactly. Like Chinese cooks like amazing Szechuan food. So very very unique guy. Speaks like 4 or 5 languages, and
Wow.
he
Nice.
so I've known him for 14 years, right? He has a very similar, though different, right? Because he's Austrian, different path into this, but that sort of has fused us together and has made us been friends for quite a long time. And when we started Helios, we borrowed on his academic background and brain computer interface, so how you can read signals from people's mind, like Elon does.
Hmm.
Elon's trying to do, I should say, with Neuralink. And then my background at Spotify, as well as another big startup and startups, was all very instrumental, because I saw what happens when you take sound, right, and
Hmm.
you apply it to technology and basically machine learning. And that was huge. I was in the first startup that ever got acquired by Spotify like 9 years ago, and just saw it firsthand at mass scale. So sort of was brewing across this, now 15-year trajectory I'm talking about. And then
Yeah.
Helios was founded in 2017, when we really sat down and like, knew we just had these unique experiences and we're very similar and have known each other a while. And we honestly, we said voice is a trend that's exploding. We said we need to like tap into something that ultimately is like a data and intelligence company with sort of a target, because we know that's going to be extremely valuable in the future. And then actually very much projecting into the future 5, 10 years. And
Hmm.
then realize voice tone is untapped, is basically an untapped source of 38% of a message.
Wow. Wow. So there wasn't a particular event that occurred saying, "Oh, damn, I wish we had a tool that would be able to detect that." Like you weren't lied to it by an investor or anything like that, right? At some point.
No, we actually, which is it's different than
I
other.
think that guy's
Yeah,
full of it,
right.
right?
We wish we had
I
that product
can't
to catch
tell.
them. We yeah, I mean honestly, no, it was a little less of a aha second or aha moment. It was more of a, we know we have some tools in the toolbox and we're really excited about like this fusion of things.
Yeah.
And we saw voice as a big opportunity. So what we stumbled upon was the hedge fund world. I mean, that definitely was
Hmm.
an aha moment when we heard actually verbatim a quant tell us, if you could tell us what an investor, or sorry, what a CEO means from their voice tone, like how believable they are, that would be the holy grail. So we heard
Wow.
that verbatim
See,
four
there's your
years
aha
ago.
moment right there.
Well, that was like the application, because right, exactly.
Right.
So we
Right.
we like kind of like swirled around voice, and we knew we could do it, and then we're like, well, where does it apply? And
Yeah.
then that was
Yeah.
actually truly a moment. It was like, aha, like we
Fantastic.
and then now 4 years later from that moment, we still are learning quite a lot about it. No one's cracked into the space, I think, probably because of the extreme capital dollars, or pretty large amount of dollars, I'd say, to get started, and just technical prowess it takes. So for
Yeah.
us, there's a lot to go. It's still the first inning, but at least there's a game. At least
Yeah.
now there's a game. 4 years ago there wasn't.
So it's a really hard problem, isn't it? Is it a really hard problem?
Yeah, well, so there's no academic literature on it, really. There's two, which is essentially zero in the space.
Two papers,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah. So
Wow.
there's two papers on this, which means a lot of people would
What a
think,
beautiful white space to work in. This is great.
well, yeah, right. Well, and that's the, I guess for anything though, like the thing that we thought was fantastic, honestly, like back to the liking the bleeding edge. The flip side is you're very much educating and needing to be that educator and
That's true.
research lab. So that is definitely what we've come to realize quite a bit, is we have to take on that a little bit more than saying, oh, this space is already at some maturity. But that's actually what drives us to kind of your
But your
initial question,
elevator
my
pitch
background.
is so understandable. It's like I've heard elevator pitches where you go on
Yep.
for 30 seconds and you still don't get
Yeah,
it.
yeah, right.
And you're
You're like,
like
what?
3 words in. Oh yeah, I know exactly
Yeah,
what you're
well,
trying to do.
and that, like, I think that excites us every day. I mean, that definitely has got us going for years. Is like the reactions you get, and
Yeah.
now to the point where you can then back it up with this product that hedge funds are buying, which means there's definitely some validity there.
Yeah.
It's not you're just really good at selling or something, or have a really good elevator pitch, but all of it now starting to connect. And honestly, it's why we're like, every day we get up and we're like, we gotta push the envelope a little bit more.
Wow. That's super exciting. That's super exciting. So can you tell us about any like barriers that you had that you come up against that you were able to blow through and how you blew through them? or is it all smooth sailing because it's such a
No,
great
no, no, no,
concept?
no, no. Yeah, that definitely is not the case. No, there were
Well,
some
think like
moments
the
where it was smooth
concept like
sailing.
this. You're like at the
That
Titanic,
well,
like ice breaking through everything.
I think we did think that in the beginning for some
Yeah.
weird reason that I don't know, totally naivety, but we thought actually there would be some smooth sailing, but it's actually totally the opposite. It's like
Oh
I'll
no.
give you a yeah, I mean it's well it's like a startup and then you fuse it with a high risk startup because it
Yeah.
doesn't exist, and
Yeah.
then you got yourself nice turbulent times to make it through and a lot of resilience. But I can give you a really good example, which was like pretty, also very concrete, is the scaling issue. So not in terms of just processing, which we could get into too, or if we wanted to or whatever. But the big scaling one was getting more audio. So if you're
Mm.
selling to a data scientist, which we quickly, kind of understood that space already, but you really quickly get to this with a quant, is you can't give them 10 observations or 50 observations or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 even. They want 50 plus thousand observations over time
Oh
because that will
geez.
get, yeah, right. It'll give you more confidence of what you're doing, right? Like if you give someone 100, it's basically almost meaningless, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
we didn't jump to the 50,000 and now actually 500 plus thousand events. What we did is we started at 50 or 25 or
Hmm.
something like that, and did the good old lean method and got a lot of people who were like, oh, that's a great elevator pitch, but 25 is a prototype at best. It can't even be
Yeah.
tested, which we kind of knew. But that process took some time. It took a little bit of luck. It took a lot of work with the partner FactSet so that we're tightly coupled with their audio pipelines. It took a whole bunch of work on processing and an infinite amount of work, it feels like, with like the AI part. But getting to where we can cover all US companies as like we knew that 3 years, like when we started, we basically knew that we're certain that we had to get to that, right? More audio.
Hmm.
But when you think about like challenge, that is one that immediately jumps out to me. I mean, it was part commercials to get it there, part, fundraising to R&D it, a lot of technical, some product, right? And knowing that it was the right bet, but totally, overcame it. And now we're looking at global by the end of this year. So that becomes,
Nice.
yeah, pretty
That's where your legal
impressive.
troubles start, right? So it's more
Yeah,
barriers
right.
to get
Yeah, well,
up through.
exactly. Yeah, right. So now that's even a whole
Yeah.
nother thing between actually exactly what you're saying. And then the other part is doing multi-language is actually also a green,
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh
evergreen
boy.
domain. But we know the
Now I
technical
need now
part,
you
which
need
is funny.
50,000 in every language and dialect, right?
Yeah,
So
right. But we actually are showing in our research. We've been doing this now for 6 months, in the lab, virtual lab, more or less. But that is possible. So we actually, I
mhm.
think we have 90% of the blueprint, which we never thought we could. We're
Wow.
certainly not able to totally announce it yet, but we think by summer we can announce it. And then that is something like double the companies. It's so it'd be like a million event data set or something like that,
Right.
which is huge.
I have
But yeah,
this
so
vision of like a double subtitle, right? So somebody's speaking, you got the subtitle of what they're actually saying, and then the undertone of what they're actually saying, like from your app. So could you get to
yep.
that point where you're saying, okay, he just said something, this is a lie, or this is he's unsure about this, or like how do
So we
you
so so we think like a trace, but going with
yeah,
that, which is totally spot on. I've heard this from investor relations teams, which we can't quite, like, we don't quite have this product yet because it's pretty sci-fi, but
right.
the idea of like a trace, like exactly like you said, has come up quite a lot, which is,
Hmm.
it's call it like confidence, back to the volatility. How confident are they in that statement? So you'd
Right.
listen or watch or transcript all of it, right? Like you're saying. But if you had this trace moving, right, and it starts to go up and down, it's like this companion listener, right? Which is how we think about a lot of this. The lie detector, and half jokingly does come up all the time. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's only because we extreme, like go to the extremes of a spectrum on something.
Yeah.
All in the middle, you could say there's like variations of that, like straight up fraud, right? Which certainly could be detectable if you sound totally different. But
Hmm.
we will look at cases where like you're more confident about describing your product launch because Tim Cook is in the weeds of it or something for some reason with their new AR glasses that'll come in a year or something, right? Like they
Right.
could know more, they sound it. You certainly still need to listen to words and understand a company. It's not like the voice tone is the only detectable signal, but without it, and that's what we tell our anybody, like without it, you're missing 38% of a message, which
Yeah.
I know from sarcasm or anything where you want to use voice tone like intuitively, like if you couldn't detect that, it would be be a sad world.
Yeah.
It'd be a sad world, I guess.
I want to see that in
And
my
confusing.
Apple AR glasses. Like, oh, I'm just talking to
Yeah, right.
somebody. Like, oh, you're full of it. No, come on.
Yeah,
What are you
right.
saying, man?
Or if someone asks you, no, I'm fine. It's like, well,
Yeah, yeah.
they're like, well, that's every person knows that something's not fine, even if you hear a different language. But our machines can't do it. I mean, go do that to what the I was gonna say Siri or like Alexa.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, I'm fine. I have no
yeah,
idea. It'll say great. It'll say
yeah.
something like, great,
That's
have
right.
a good day. It's like
Exactly.
it's not too helpful.
So I'm really curious. So this. How do you train this model? I mean, did you have like a control set of, hey, these people are definitely lying, or these people are definitely fudging what they're saying, and then here's people who are telling the truth or telling, like, how can you program the model? How can you train
Uh,
the model
yeah.
so that it knows the difference between these things? Because I mean, it's not human. You and I, like you said, you can say something sarcastic and I get it, right? Because I can sense it. But how do you train the model to understand that?
Yeah, it's quite a complicated long answer. I mean, an actually never ending one. But like you just
I
mentioned a
bet.
label, for instance, right? Like sarcasm. What is that, and how do you define it? And if you wrote it down right now and I wrote it down, we're gonna write down two different things actually, because it's
Yeah.
so loosely known. So what we had to do was use some of our expertise and use as much non-financial literature at first, because it's like scientific literature, right? Things about like neurolinguistics or neuroscience, and a lot of people have looked into this, but like
Hmm.
applying all these domains into finance has not been done. So we had to actually do a lot of that work, and that's where my co-founder's background is so critical, because it was, I mean, it still actually is. Now we're going to be part of the literature, very soon. But it's a huge process of trying to connect a lot of dots, trying to connect as much as we could from the space, because people have looked at emotion detection, people have looked at early onset Parkinson's detections from certain, components of voice, but none of them have ever aligned it with financial performance for a portfolio, right? Or all the existing data that's
Hmm.
around financial portfolio management, like for a quant or non-quant, and then ultimately integrating that. So we've we've at a very high level, the answer is combine these sort of domains, right? Like actually had to do a person, like a expert, my co-founder and I deep dive into this, and support from really smart people on our team. A lot of trial and error running these
Hmm.
models. I mean, they're massive data sets, so sort of like a marginally technical answer is you have to deploy a lot of compute resources to then even test theories. So think about like even 100,000 hours of audio, which is now only 10-15% of our corpus.
Hmm.
That takes a long time to run a new model set, like a lot of processing time, a lot of processing compute. So another piece of the equation is, you know, big data optimization and just raw cost. I mean, we're not, we couldn't even, you can't like over optimize. So you have to deploy these massive machines to do this R&D. So what we've built is a pipeline where we can take, theories, hypotheses, run it through this like massive system now with, 500,000 plus hours, and then determine through a lot of financial frameworks and wizardry if you can get effects from those new signals. So,
Hmm.
and that's a never ending process. So it's sort of similar to like other machine learning domains, but some of those specifics for us was, are important. Like I said, you have to have huge data sets, otherwise they won't pay attention. You got to be very confident with your ultimate financial modeling, like your portfolio testing and what that could mean, your back testing. And that's well, anyway, doing all that at least at a V1 across the board, or V2 now, has led us to getting some pretty big names in the door.
Nice. Nice. So I still have to figure out, how do you know though? I mean, how does the system know? I mean, are you able to say, are you training it by saying, okay, here's a batch that we know is this, and here's a batch that we know that, or is there sort of literature out there that says this is how a human being sounds when they're doing X, Y, Z? Like,
So
is it just a
so
combination of both, or?
it's I think two ways to answer that, or two pieces to answer that. It is a combination of both. So there's nothing that says directly, right, measure some, frequency in this sliding time window, and then that'll give you some tradable signal in,
Right.
a long only strategy where you're trading only the S&P 500 historically or something like that.
Hmm.
We're the closest to ever, and we actually are doing that essentially, but we're the closest ever to doing that without giving away like any, secret sauce. But it's been that it doesn't exist. What we can do is look at, ideas in the space, like what is early onset detection of someone, or what's a good one? Like emotion detection is better, right?
Hmm.
So an emotion is close to it, but it's certainly not the same. You can't just trade someone being happy or sad like that. That doesn't make sense, and it doesn't work. But you can take these concepts and then back to like that testing, you can get a signal, which then you also have to harness up that signal to answer your question to definitively know is to run it against a portfolio test. It would be like give me 500,000 observations, ram that signal through a as sophisticated as you can back test and show me that the alpha that comes out is higher than if I didn't use it. Show
Hmm.
me that you can pair that alpha with another one, right? Like that testing is sophistication in and of itself, but other people do that. I mean, that is what hedge funds do, right? They're
Right.
portfolio
Right.
modeling and testing. So that's the way you would know. I mean, a customer buying it, I guess, is a even better way to know. But at least independent of that, it's a matter of can you see that portfolio at the end of the day get yield, right? Can you take a volatility strategy or a like a trigger that you've designed around volatility measurements, and could you make that into a strategy which yields something, right? Does it reduce your risk,
Yeah.
exposure? Does it give you higher and also reduce your risk, but does it give you higher returns on it over some
Hmm.
certain period? So
Well,
all those,
have you been able to sort of come up with a probability percentage or something like that, saying like somebody actually announces something and then like a couple of weeks later, it turns out that you've been able to successfully detect
yeah.
the
So I mean, those
volatility?
are our use cases. Yeah, our use cases are approaching finally double digits.
Mm.
So a couple that are very substantial. They don't sound as sexy to talk about, but they're totally substantial in our white paper and where we spend a bunch of time are things like M&A, which sounds
Hmm.
kind of funny,
Yeah.
and kind of unusual because it would be even if you don't talk about the merger and acquisition that's to come, we can detect a difference in your voice than when those don't occur. So that
Mm.
the issue there is we had a sample of like 8,000, which goes back to not a ton, but that's quite a decent sample, and the numbers are extremely robust on the statistical validity of that. So it's the story, the colloquial part would be you know that this $20 billion merger is coming as CEO. I mean, if I'm one point buying a $20 billion company, basically making the decision, I'm sure it weighs on me. Hopefully positively. Otherwise, I don't know why I'd be doing it. But
Yeah.
those differences come across in your voice tone. And it's
Hmm.
because of the magnitude of those events. And I think that magnitude just leaks through. So
Right.
we've shown that one, for instance. We've shown volatility trends. So there's like different ways to kind of answer your question, different artifacts, but we've shown volatility at a industry or sort of market level.
Hmm.
The trends actually precede the VIX, or sorry, the ValQ. The ValQ is like Nasdaq's
Oh, you're
version of the
getting all
VIX.
technical on me now. What is that?
Yeah. So the so the VIX is like the fear and greed index that's existed.
Oh,
So are
okay.
things volatile or not? The ValQ is Nasdaq's version of it, which has a different different way of generating it essentially. But it's market volatility. So what we can show is from the voices of everybody, the voice tones of everyone speaking that we analyze, there's a corresponding movement before the movement in those indicators because we're basically
Mm.
capturing it earlier. We're capturing it when someone who's a CEO could potentially know things are going to get tricky, and they could be talking about it too. It's not like they're concealing or lying or anything, but we can detect this, and it actually front runs major market indicators, which is a big one too.
Wow, that's
So
really
there,
cool. That's very
that
cool.
one's
You
my
guys
most
profited off that
exciting
yet,
one.
though?
Well, we got people buying it, basically buying our data because of it. So yes, in a way, we're not trading directly. But those two examples are a handful. There's a handful more, but like those use cases are what we do all day. I mean, that's what we're trying to this whole process of you have to own the data to then analyze it and do hypotheses and test it. It's as you can imagine, a lot to get there. But nearly 10 of them now, and that's what's starting to really, I think, tip the needle for us or tip the scales for us.
Very cool. Very cool. So is because you're in this specific space, this specific financial space, I mean, I'm assuming that's one of the reasons why you're so accurate. Is it, are you thinking about like sort of going beyond that? And do you think the models will fall apart, or are you gonna have to do a lot more work, or?
Yeah, so it's a great question because one of the known difficulties with like an AI company is moving from vertical to vertical. So
Mhm.
it's, you're like you're saying, your models are
Not that your current vertical isn't fully like there's tons of
right,
space in
right, right.
the current vertical.
Exactly. But we do so two things. One is we've set the company up to be basically data first,
Hmm.
industry agnostic as best we can. There are challenges, like you can't just flip a switch. That's definitely not
Oh yeah, impossible.
it's yeah, not as much as like a piece of SaaS
Well, how
software,
many
right? If you
quantum
can,
computers have you got back there, right?
yeah, right. I mean, well, yeah, the amount of compute Google would love it. GCP would, be salivating at the bill to go through. But but there are like known issues compared to SaaS, so that like we can't totally annihilate. What we can do is what we've done. I think from day one, we thought about how it could apply to other industries, so it's as agnostic and sort of like platform friendly as we can. We've
Hmm.
definitely done prototypes. So when we're raising dollars and have raised, over 1 million in basically angel investors in the pre-seed
Nice.
rounds, that question comes up a lot, as you can imagine, because people, think like how can it go larger? So I always answer it like we're going to totally own the space that we're in, and we've invested to do that. We have set it up though to think about the fact that there are a lot of spaces where that whole kind of platform I described, where you're taking an audio and you're doing hypotheses and you're processing a ton and ultimately can then validate it, that is hardened right now by the hedge funds because they're so intense and so
Hmm.
scrutinizing.
Yeah.
But it does not take a big leap, and we've done some prototypes on it. Does not take a big leap to think about something like consumer surveys, for instance.
Mm.
So market research teams spend a lot around movies, around advertising, around basically anything to understand consumers and efficacy, right? So what we've seen, glimmers of, and have a system that can already kind of manage the hypothesis testing, is what if we had a whole bunch of like ads or ad responses even, and we wanted to ferret out voice tone from it, and we knew what we're trying to basically get after, like with someone, what's a good one? Like, was the ad successful? Could be driven by CTR, right? Like a
Yeah.
click-through rate could exist. So you have all these ingredients, with at least the platform, a big ingredient there. But if you have the ad audio and sort of like performance data, you can actually start to merge those. And we've thought about that for 5 years. I mean, 4 years, basically,
Wow,
four or
that is
five years.
that is a huge space because everyone
That
lies
is
all the
a huge
time
space.
on that stuff.
Well,
I
like
was
the
just thinking of
responses are crazy. The ads, how epic, what if you change the one we talk about all the time is like, what if you change the voiceover, just the tone of it, right?
yeah,
Like I'm doing some Budweiser commercial that's supposed to make me like weep, right?
yeah,
Which is the Clydesdales or something. I'm the same voice actor, but you just read it differently. Like
yeah.
that will, I'm sure, change the output, and it's not
Hmm.
like I don't know. It's not, now you're, directly understanding the emotional state of the person, but it's how the audience could actually respond to it, which, that's why actors exist and voice actors. There's better ones than not. And
Hmm.
I probably would probably not be the best one, but there's a lot of ways to detect this. Goes back to like trying to emote. It goes back to like really the purpose of our company, which is that transparency, as well as like, this high fidelity communication. Cause we sort of like, we don't say we're trying to save the world like other companies. What we are seeing though is a world that's like condensing communication
Hmm.
because of text messaging, because of like volume and all this stuff. So you like are losing a whole piece of like what we basically are designed to do, which we think is a
Right.
pretty negative thing. So we want to fix that. It's transparency, it's high fidelity, it's emoting, like call it kind of what you will, dependent on the domain. But we want to get that actually supercharged. We want to make it better.
Hmm.
We don't want it to go away.
Yeah. No, I get this. I get the sense that once your technology becomes more prevalent all over the place, then it's not just people are going to be trained differently. Like their training for being on those calls is going to be very, very different, right? Because if they understand that somebody's looking for tone, then they're going to have to train people to be careful with their tones and stuff like that. So, I mean, is that
And
going to
we
be?
and we even say like so it's funny because that always comes up, like this whole training of the words you say has always been around like concealing or like carefully crafting and condensing it, and you start to get those
Yes.
like homogeny
Hmm.
versus what we've seen is certain CEOs, like yeah, actually Elon, we've been able to actually do these tests, is you
That
can
must be
get more
fun.
tone. Yeah, well, that's how we kind of started our career, as we detected that they would break their all-time high. So
Yeah.
so Elon was getting like, he like emotes more basically. He's very
Hmm.
clear with his tone, and just uses it
Yeah,
like
he's an easy
wildly.
subject, though. You got to find somebody harder than that.
Well, you're right, but sometimes easy layup is good too. But we
Yeah,
pick,
that's true.
there's
You
other ones
start with
around
the
it.
easy ones.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're doing something like this. So he's like, there's others examples. So I mean, Larry Fink is extremely bullish. He's like screaming basically all the time on these
Oh
calls.
yeah.
But like the emotive component of it, it's to us less about like crafting it down and more actually about turning it up. Like
Hmm.
what if all these CEOs could actually emote to the level of like an actor, because
Yeah.
you are actually getting more information out, which is what you want. You don't want to like condense it down so your channel of information is like, little tiny bits. It's actually the opposite, we think, which is
Hmm.
to us one of the most exciting parts, because it's like a totally counterintuitive argument of, if you can get better at your tone and just like push it,
Yeah.
people are going to get people, and now our machines that we make will detect more of it, which actually
Yeah.
gives you an advantage
Yeah.
versus like you squish it into a box. Now all of a sudden you got, an even worse one. Though during Q&A, it's hard to kind of like conceal your tone too, because it's sort of baked into you. But something we bring up all the time, because it's like, you want your message to get across, you want to be understood, and you want to, basically have it be the highest fidelity possible.
Yeah. No, I see it. It's great because it's technology that can be used for good and evil, right?
Yeah,
But you're using it
exactly.
for good, so that's good.
We think it makes it, yeah, it'll be a major change to the space. It's already like it raises so many eyebrows with with everything we do in finance. It's like, I don't know. I have told people, like, how is it that billions of dollars are traded algorithmically, like a lot, billions and billions,
Yeah.
and they're totally tone deaf machines. Like, isn't that a little bit terrifying? Like
Yeah.
decisions
Yeah.
are made without people in the loop, basically. I mean, they're observing them, and they're, of course, but
Yeah, they
there's
just look at
no
they just look at the numbers, right? And there's
right.
no they don't look, and the thing is that all of this
They have
stuff is
access to
driven
them.
by emotion. It's so driven by emotion, and
I would
people,
argue more than ever. Like, you've seen
yeah.
this probably with Jerome Powell says like one word, and now he's dovish all of a sudden. Whoosh, like everything
Yeah.
changed,
Exactly.
someone says two words that they key on. I mean, all these things are people, to your point, clamoring for like more information from sources, because a lot of it's getting, already sucked in. And the idea of like emotion being this negative thing, or like something that needs to be concealed, not, we've heard elsewhere, people kind of always go to this. It's kind of, I don't know, it's just like not what we think is the right answer. You'd get way more out
Hmm.
of it otherwise. I try to
Yeah.
emote more. I bought this
Yeah.
better microphone so I could emote better. It's just like, try to harness it, right? Try to take it, take it for a spin and
Well, yeah, that's
be a
that's
better
part of the human
communicator.
special sauce, right? I mean, but
Yeah,
that's the thing. I
versus
mean, if you
everyone
look at
talks like a drone. That's
exactly,
the alternative. We don't want to do
well,
that. We try to not do that.
yeah, exactly. Or or you try to do that, and then people go, "Well, what's wrong with this guy? Is he trying to hide something, or like, why is he being so emotionless?" Right?
Yep. Yeah.
I
Right.
mean,
Right. And we think that's not. It's definitely like a little philosophical, but like how the world's just like gone around text, and how technology is wrapped around it for decades now. It's sort of like, that's why to us emojis also are so well like loved. Is you and
mhm.
now voice is being piped into messaging. Like there are better conduits that exist. The emoji is a perfect example of like threading tone, emotion into these conversations that people, obviously it's used all the time, used everywhere. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah. No, I'm glad that we're
we get
moving
there.
more to more sort of audio visual type of communications, because text has always been the king of everything because it's so easy to do something
Right.
with, right? But all this other stuff is where we human beings actually, because if you think about it, text is sort of like a distillation of what we're thinking and feeling
Right.
and talking about. It's
Exactly.
voice, it's audio, it's visual. That's how human beings communicate. So stepping away from text actually brings us closer to being human or
And
connecting in a
well,
human way.
exactly, like plug for Avatar, the new movie, which I have no affiliation with or anything, but it's a perfect example. Like they move people, right? Like the whole idea of, you see something and you hear something, and the music is a piece, and you actually get like a full on experience from
Yeah.
something audiovisual. I mean, I don't think every word or every earnings call is going to bring people to tears, but like the idea that it's the opposite right
But
now
if
is
you
totally,
could,
well, if you could, then yeah, then you got real magic on your hands. But like the flip side is, the like what we were saying is, like, you condense it down into these totally chosen, totally generic, like a lot of them are just like the scripts. You hear this all the time. The prepared remarks
yep.
for earnings calls are basically like, you might as well have a machine read them. And you
Yep.
think
Stick
about,
to the script. Stick to the script.
yeah, and I've thought about that. Not to say IR teams, like, I think they could do a lot more, but the fact that I've heard that now for years, because I didn't come from the space, like, blows my mind still. Like, so you have this ultra important listen to conversation, and you basically could have a machine read it.
Yeah. How long
Like
before that
what?
happens?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's
God, that'll
insane.
screw
The
you
Q
guys
and A.
over, wouldn't it? That would be awful if they started
Well,
getting machines to
there's
read it.
it depends on how deep we go in the future on this conversation, but things with like synthetic voice or clone voices and everything that we're pretty deep in exploring these other spaces to know what's going to happen in 10 years. Like we're sure it like we play a piece in all these things, you know, like voice
Hmm.
tone, but there's probably going to be some changes to it. Like a good example too is Zoom does video, of course, because Zoom has Zoom as a product. They use Zoom to do their earnings calls, which
Yeah.
all of a sudden you get like visuals, you get the people talking, you can see them. There's obviously now audio, it's high fidelity audio.
Hmm. Hmm.
When I saw that, I was like, everybody should just be on Zoom. You know, this
Yeah,
is
exactly.
much better, but it's so much easier probably to call in and you have this little, you know, the phone and you sound like you're coming in through like an ant and you've got these like, you know, horribly condensed mics and everything. And it's, I mean, it's just like a technology thing. It was just, that's what technology was 20 years ago. You know, that's
Yeah,
all it
yeah.
was, phones.
And it's still like that. And sometimes I think people like
You
hiding
watch.
behind that, right?
Yeah, right. Cause it's, you know, like people, I think, don't want to always like they don't afraid to be wrong. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
People generally don't want to sound wrong. So all these things come through, and yeah, like you said, I think you get less information because you're kind of hiding behind little condensed cell phone mics and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
gotta not what we're trying to do. So if we have anything to say about it, which we kind of are already, it's a future where like everyone's on Zooms, everyone has mics that you know companies can afford slightly better mics. You get more out of it. You know, you get
Yeah.
like you said, you get more human out of it.
Could you actually flip your tech the other way around and actually use it to improve voice tone and AI? Like when you get speech tech is text to speech?
I think there's a lot of ways to do that. Yeah. Like ways where under back kind of like the audience understanding or audience insights, you can understand how people would interpret it because that's
Yeah.
basically a model. You know, you like a synthetic audience is essentially what we do now, right? Like this
Hmm.
forecast is saying here's how the voice tone will be interpreted by the market in a particular measurement.
Right.
So that I think is where it goes. You know, we are investing in that direction, and that's why market insights is why I bring that up because it's the one we've looked at pretty deeply. So that's where voiceovers come in around advertising and whatnot. Is you would sort of get like a dry run, like a synthetic audience to tell you how does that sound, right? So can you adjust it pre-launch? Can you adjust it like live potentially in some way? I'm sure those are sort of like delivery mechanisms, but all that does I think have the underpinnings of what we're trying to do, which is you know should be incorporated, should be interactive, it should be available to you know developers when they're building software or speakers, right, when they're
Yeah.
doing things.
But could you take those voice tone models and like actually apply them to AI? So it says my Alexa be is a lot more emotive to me based on the tones that you're mapping to.
Yeah, and
Would
they
that be
want yeah,
possible?
and they want to. Actually,
Yeah.
Amazon was the only major tech company I've seen that deployed voice tone analysis anywhere. They
Hmm.
did it in their Halo health watch, whatever it's called, like
Oh,
wearable.
really? They should put in
Yeah.
Alexa.
Well, so I think that's what they're trying to do. So also plug for Helios if anyone at Amazon wants to get in touch with us, please feel free to. But the Alexa experience I've talked about all the time. We have actually an Alexa skill because I'm such a proponent of it. Is like
Mhm.
the future app I think is really like voice enabled because people have app fatigue. I've
Oh
started
yeah,
making apps when they first came out.
absolutely.
It's all tapping. It's kind of like the texting, all tapping, all moving. That's why now you know even those are turning into more like you know content versus screen after screen after screen. But
Yeah.
the Alexa skill that we've invested in, right, can talk about our product, can kind of be like a virtual assistant. I would love, which can't happen until I guess Amazon acquires Helios or something, but they would be great if they incorporated like inflection. So I can talk through the Alexa skill, so it's getting my voice with my mic and everything. But
Hmm.
when you have these synthetic voices, if you could know how an audience would respond, you could do things like yours would be potentially slightly different, or
Hmm.
you could obviously understand what an emphasis means for what you're trying to say. And it just goes back to like higher fidelity conversation, right? Higher fidelity,
Yeah.
which you definitely could do synthetically, 100%. I mean, there's kind of people already looking at that. Um, a great company for anyone interested is Respeecher. So they're like the leaders
Respeecher.
and
Okay.
yeah, so they're leader, Alex and team. So Alex is their CEO. They've like totally talk about blow me away with technology. They do voice cloning, so they can
Oh,
actually,
nice.
and they've done it with major studios like Disney and everything. So they're a pioneer in their own for sure in their own right. But it's how do you make synthetic voices, right? And how do you make it
Wow.
sound, yeah, like real.
So now that we're probably going to eventually get rid of DJs then, or podcasters, right? Because you could just type up the script and have a create a
Ah,
real voice.
I like to think not. I think that's like saying, when I don't know, like Daft Punk and everything started using a lot of electronic music, like was it gonna, I don't know, eliminate like people in the mix for music?
Yeah,
I think those things will be innately human. That's why we kind of come at it with the angle of like all the technology that got merged into music. Some of it definitely watered it down for sure, but a lot of it made like great new music. So we think that's kind
yeah,
of the approach here is we can do like, or back to the earnings calls, like they don't need to be emotionless or tone deaf or
yeah.
toneless, right? Like drones, they can be
Even though they try.
more, yeah, well, yeah. So, and
Don't let them think that there are any problems.
that's right. Yeah, no, right. Like, I don't know. We think it's a better way. Markets can price it in. Certainly, there's people who fraud and there's people who don't know how to present and all these things. So it's never going to be some magical,
Oh, sure.
wonderland or something. But I think people who harness it are going to take an advantage,
Yeah.
for all these sort of domains.
Very cool. All right. So it's time to think like a futurist. It's 2033, 10 years out.
All
Where
right.
will you
Like,
be in 10
oh,
years?
some sort of
Come on, you haven't figured
floating
that out so
island.
far? Where's your
Well,
10-year plan?
Helios will be a gigantic public company that has now integrated with robotics. But I think there's two like themes I talk about all the time. So regardless of I think the exact trajectory of Helios, because we certainly are, we have a plan to make sure we continue to be break even right now, so we can move in a path where we're basically control our destiny. We
Hmm.
definitely are looking at more public issuance of our stocks. So right now, actually, as of this morning, you can invest in Helios directly through Helios. So we
Oh,
have
nice.
securities offered through our website. It's sort of like crowdfunding, but it's a Reg S
Nice. Oh,
and
yeah. I see the invest button right here.
yep. So if anybody wants to use a $500, we did a crowdfunding through a platform or
Oh,
public, and now we're
nice.
doing that. So it's sort of that community public issuance direction we're going. Um, so it's been successful. But like two trends, I guess, like I could take Helios a little bit out of the equation, but we'll be dancing between them. Is the voice proliferation. Like that's why
Mm,
we got into it. I mentioned in the beginning that I think is definitely not stopping, even though there's been some, I don't know, rumblings with the whole like Alexa shipping off audio to I think the Philippines, and then was it available and was it secure and all this. So I think there's certainly like always security and privacy should be top of funnel, I think. But the ease, because that's how we actually like that is our interface, like a natural user interface.
hmm.
I think that's just gonna win. I mean, we're basically seeing it as soon as they get rid of phones and put the glasses on, which will happen in the
Yeah.
next, 3 to 5 years,
Yeah. I'm
and
just
it'll
waiting
be
for Apple. They're the ones who are
it's
they're gonna commercialize it
it'll
successfully.
yeah. I mean, they got everything, and the win would be, is it a better experience, right? And if it's all voice or and screens that track your eyes and these things, which are just better than like tap tap, my neck's broken, tap
Oh,
tap
yeah.
tap, everyone like that to me instantly becomes like the mass proliferation of it, where everyone thinks going to be voice enabled. You can already do a whole bunch of this. They're going to have better assistance. All these things will explode, I think, in 3 to 5 years. And then if you keep going out there, I actually am very keen to the robotics explosion, which also I think is because of voice. So that is definitely, the what are they called? The Roombas. I don't
Yeah.
don't think don't impress me too much. I do have one, but they've been doing that for a long time, and I guess now they empty themselves or something. But that's it
Yeah,
took
but
10
it's
years or
taken
something.
forever. Everything takes so long.
I
It's
know we want it
amazing
we
how
want it
long
all
things
now.
take.
Well, we've been doing this voice stuff for 4 years too, and was thinking about that today. I go, we got a whole nother year till we're global, which seems super fast in one way, but then super slow
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
another way. But I think robotics is the other one. So we certainly, and I personally lean towards like these platforms because I started with like actually desktops when I was a kid, but then apps were something I was in the early days, and now I was in streaming early days, and then
Hmm.
this voice and voice tone early days. The way voice incorporates into those two, which one I think actually will replace cell phones, right? It'll seem like I think silly at some point in the next 10 years where we're like, why was everyone's head down and
Yeah,
looking
exactly.
down
Exactly. All
and
those
doing all that?
chiropractor bills.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a real thing. That is like, I mean, I think I partially experienced it. I gotta like remember to
Yeah. Yeah. Me
keep my
too.
head up, and I'm not. I don't think I'm a heavy phone user, but that I think will start taking off, and then the idea of like whatever robotics are, like there probably won't be like humanoid people walking around, but the voice leap into that,
Oh yeah.
I think will make that experience easier. Because if you have robotics, you really don't slap them with big touch screens. What you would want to do is incorporate like a natural user interface to them.
Yep.
So all that to us is one of the reasons Helios can be so exciting, because if we keep building it correctly, you have an engine that could keep deploying into platforms or spaces that need it. And then also the team is basically data scientists, right? Like we're
Yep.
data scientists, researchers, and certainly could think about a lot of data problems, but right now we're focused on the one. So that's my that's what I mean, I guess no one can predict the future, but that seems very clear those are going to happen
Yeah.
in the next
Well,
10
no,
years.
for example,
And
you remember
yeah,
you must have seen the movie Her,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, like
Required watching
everyone,
for Helios team
everyone
members.
passes over because they go, "Oh, that's not a very futuristic vision." But and like that's where we're going to go. As far as I'm concerned, that's a more accurate depiction of where the future is going to be is the audio assistant. Because the thing about audio and glasses, like reasonably looking glasses, not like giant
Yeah, yeah,
ugly
not the yeah,
glasses. But the thing about audio is that it doesn't get in the way of the face-to-face experience, right? So I'm talking to
yeah,
you, I could have things being piped into my ear and you don't even know. Like it's like, oh, this guy is blah 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 or remember you have an appointment or whatever and I'm still talking to you and nothing's blocking way. I'm not picking up my phone and looking at it, so I'm not blocking the conversation between the two of us. So I think audio is probably going to be like you're saying like the
well,
best way.
it almost like embodies a person too, or like general, even though it won't
Yeah.
have like general intelligence or anything like
Yeah.
that, but it would actually embodies like an assistant like they've used. And for me, it's like I've used it in certain pieces, and I'm just like super on board, obviously, with Helios, that is going to
Yeah.
be the future, because it's it makes life easier. You talk about the glasses that are available, so now your hands are free, which are a big thing because right now they're not free with
Yeah.
something. So,
Yeah.
and you actually already know, so maybe this isn't even, it's kind of like a cheap futurist explanation, I bet, but you already know Apple's doing it, right? Like Apple is totally clearly going to deploy a version of that. I've been working on it for like 6, 7, 8 years or something
Yeah.
after the phone, and
Yeah. Well,
once
I'm
that
glad that
happens, it's
they're
going to be boom.
see that's the thing about Apple. It's like, you have to think of Apple as a consumer product company, not a tech company. Because if they were a tech company, they'd have come out with something like Google Glass already, and it would have
Yep,
failed miserably and it would have been awful. But you know that they're spending the time to do it right because they know that their audience is everybody.
yep.
It's the world. It's not just, techies who are interested in super advanced stuff. So I can't wait to see it because it's probably going to be great and
Yeah, I was
everybody's going
gonna
to want
say
it.
I can't. I was gonna say I can't wait to see it. Very, of course, very interested on their voice application of it too. But I can't
Yeah,
imagine it doesn't figure out how to leapfrog what it's doing, because
exactly. So
they
how
need a
how do you
phone
control
replacement.
it? I mean, it's like you tap your
Yeah, like
eyeglasses or
I was gonna say, you can't do this. Like that's, I don't think the hand waving is gonna be the thing. I think it's gonna be a lot of like,
see,
a
see people
lot of
walking down the
assisted.
street going like this, right?
Yep. And I would bet, of course, like they're gonna use all the Siri understanding and software to
Yeah,
power that mind, and who knows, that's probably why they push it so hard, is
yeah,
you need 5, 10 years of that data to make a next gen experience. But I mean, gamers
exactly.
is another one that jumps out to me, like the whole AR, VR,
Hmm.
overlap with gaming, which is of course being pushed to simultaneously. It's like you have like things you're talking to in the game all the time, where the NPCs and everything in the game
Yeah,
constantly. Like those also are a blend of like Hollywood, of course, meets next gen computing. So that yeah, it's all coming, that's for sure. And luckily, or not so luckily, because we just kind of paid attention to it, but the trend is definitely positive for what I think we're doing here at Helios.
yeah. No, it's fantastic. Really cool stuff. And I'm looking at clicking that invest button right now, right after we get off the call.
Go for it. Just add as many zeros as you can, Chris. Let's your finger slip.
I'll have to talk to my CFO first, but
Yeah, I
then
was gonna say, just get executive approval, and
that's right.
it's no problem. But anyone who's interested certainly can do it. We're gonna keep that up for the year, and we've been doing this sort of rolling actually pre-seed round. We've already did it
Very
last year, we did it
cool.
before, and it's gonna be good.
Very cool. I love it. All right. So thanks so much. This is great. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
The best way is to just send me an email. Right now, I'm not getting spam too much, so I'll put that out there. But it is
But
Sean
your
at the
website is
dot.
helioslife.enterprises.
Yeah,
That's a long
Helios.
website. That's a long.
That's a dot enterprises throws people off. Actually, we can't even fill out some forms because they
Yeah, because
validate
they
on the
like
.com. And I've realized like, but it is unique. It is actually the company's name, Helios Life Enterprises. And then yeah, anyone could send me an email, which is Sean at Helios Life Enterprises. And if I get
awesome.
spam botted, I'll know where it comes from. But
Okay.
until then, well, until then, I'll be okay.
All right, sir. Thanks so much. This is great. I love it.
Appreciate it. Thanks so
All
much
right.
for
Talk
having
to you
me.
soon. Bye.
Take care.